of my favorite plants in the winter garden is kale. Now, kale's been around for a long time and has been grown in many different countries. It's popular in Africa, Brazil, Ireland, Scotland, just all over the world, and there are many different kinds of kale. Some kales are really kind of ornamental but can be used as edibles. Two of my favorites here are the Nagoya and then the lovely peacock kale. You can eat them, but I don't think they're nearly as flavorful as some of the rest of the kales. Now, why would you want to grow kale? It's very high in fiber. It has good levels of iron, lutein. It has cancer-preventing agents in it, and it's just one of the most nutritious vegetables you can eat. There are a lot of health benefits to eating kale. Plus, it's a beautiful plant to have in your garden. I've been using kale in some of my flower beds with pansies and violas for the winter, and it's really lovely. Now, some other varieties of kale that you might want to grow, the Toscano or Dinosaur kale, and it's called that because it has this pebbly blue-green foliage, is probably my favorite, and if I were only going to grow one kale, it would be that one. The red Russian kale is another great one. It has a lovely leaf as well, and both of these kales tend to get fairly tall. They'll end up being 2.5 to 3 feet tall in their final growth, so it's nice to have something with that height in the winter garden. And then the Redbor kale has a really wonderful deep purple color and curly leaves. The Winterbor or curly kale is used a lot in salads and just a very lovely plant as well. So what can you do with kale? Generally, you're going to saute it or cook it like a green. Sauteing for 5 minutes tends to preserve most of the valuable nutrients in kale, but you can cook it, and I love kale in scrambled eggs, in omelets. It's also great to add to soups. It's wonderful in potato soup, lentil soup, white bean soup with this Toscano kale is a very traditional Italian favorite and one that I cook quite a bit. I also like to make kale chips, and these are really delicious. Any of the kales will work to do this, and you just cut the kale into fairly large pieces, about the size of a potato chip. Take any really large, tough stems off, and then toss them with some olive oil and a little sea salt, and make sure that the leaves are very well coated. And I preheat the oven to 325 degrees. Also make sure your kale is very well dried. I like to use a salad spinner because you want these to get very crisp, and it takes a lot longer in the oven if the leaves are very wet. So put the kale with the olive oil and salt on it on a parchment-lined baking sheet into the oven at 325 degrees, and it should take 15 to 20 minutes. And stir the kale with a pair of tongs every 5 minutes or so, and you'll end up with this really crispy, delicious chip that is just as tasty as potato chips and a lot healthier. Now, you can also dry your kale in the dehydrator and use that dried kale in soups and sauces through the rest of the year. You can use a dehydrator to make the kale chips as well if you don't want to use the oven. And you'll find lots of tasty and delicious ways to use kale if you have it in your garden. So check our website for more of recipes for using kale and some more ideas on using kale. I'm Trisha Shirey for Backyard Basics.